Catherine from Taking Tea with Catherine. Welcome back. Or welcome. Either way. I'm going to apologize right now because there's a little bit of a buzz going on. I have the AC on. I have to have the AC on because it is the worst week in July. It is the worst of everything. The hot, the humid, sticky. I have iced tea, which is helping me very much. It's another Celestial Seasonings. You know, I go for the very basic with my iced teas, but it's good. It's a watermelon lime zinger, which is extremely summer and refreshing, you know, so that's something. And we're still in July, which again, I don't like the month, but I'm really enjoying the Jane Austen aspect of it. And I'm just here today to talk about some of the progress I've made in the Jane Austen July challenge, and I've made quite a bit. It's past the middle of the month now, and I think I'm basically on time. I'm just going to talk briefly about the books that I've read and the books that I have yet to read or am in the middle of reading. So let's start with Longbourn by Jo Baker. So I enjoyed this. I would say I probably would give it a 3.5 stars. That doesn't mean I didn't like it because I enjoyed the story as it went on. I really thought it was fascinating how the servant's perspective would be. I mean, I know I've watched Downton Abbey and they go really into the less glamorous part of life. You know, it was a lot dirtier than the upstairs life, at least as far as cleanliness is concerned. And this book just kicks off describing laundry day, and it's slightly gross, but it kind of gets you into what it's going to be about. And I like the characters. Some of them were based on people that were mentioned briefly in Pride and Prejudice, like Mrs. Hill and Sarah, and then they bring in other fictional servants, and one of which sort of a footman that comes, that he's new, and you know, obviously he's sort of the love interest situation. I liked him too. I didn't like everything what they did with him. I would say this, even though I like this story, and I can't not like a story around Pride and Prejudice, I feel like they kind of over dramatized those sort of bits with his life and his backstory, which I can't really get into because I don't want to give away spoilers, although I probably will eventually at some point anyway, whether I like it or not. But yeah, like I said, I didn't hate it. I just thought it wasn't necessary, but I suppose the story had to move forward somehow. I also liked they took it slightly before and slightly after the actual story of Pride and Prejudice, so you get a little bit more, a little roundedness. I mean, it's basically covered in a novel, Pride and Prejudice, so you kind of know what's going to happen, but you get a little more of a feeling of what would life be like, maybe for Elizabeth after she was married. Just a little taste of it, not a lot, but just a little bit. And I also thought, you know, I'd seen what was it called, Lost in Austen, which I believe it might have been a book, but it was definitely a TV series when I watched it. It was a mini-series of a woman who somehow gets transported into the story of Pride and Prejudice from modern times and somehow screws up the plot a little bit. And they made Mr. Wickham a little bit, I wouldn't say nicer, but just more helpful, I would say. Again, don't want to give it away too much. And they made Mr. Collins kind of even creepier. In this story, they did it a little bit of a about face. Anyway, Mr. Collins, I've always actually, even though he's annoying and he's meant to be that way, he's written that way, there's always this feeling that, oh, I kind of feel sorry for him because he is really only doing what he thinks he should be doing. He's not going about it the right way. He's totally awkward and totally gauche. Is that the word? Gauche. I can't speak any language anymore. You know, this is just how he is, and I think they kind of get into that a little more because, you know, when servants deal with people, they see certain things that maybe Elizabeth Bennet wouldn't have seen. Anyway, I like the book. It was good. I do recommend it if you like a good, I don't know if it's a pastiche, but like a story around Jane Austen, another retelling, sure, read it. I just didn't fall in love with it, if that makes sense. Okay, so I reread Sense and Sensibility. I still love it very much. I think it's still firmly number 2 for me. doesn't sound right, but you know what I mean. My second favorite. Only thing I didn't like, and I'm not going to say didn't like as far as the story itself, it's still a great story, and there were so many bits that I'd forgotten about because I've seen so often the Kate Winslet, Emma Thompson version that is wonderful, and I did watch again this month, but it takes out some details, which it was kind of interesting to see the details in here. There's Lucy Steele, but her sister's in here, for instance. Sir John Middleton, but he's not a widow. You know, so there's just these characters that you almost forget about, but they're still kind of important, but I understand why they took it out of that specific film. Sometimes, you know, poetic license or whatever. Artistic license? Poetic? A little of both. So, I still love it. Still probably a 5-star for me. I would say toward the ending, I got a little bit like, all right, let's wrap this up. Because I forgot that there's a little bit that, you know, delays a little bit. It takes a while to finish it up, and it's just me being an impatient modern person, you know. I still love it to bits. I just think it was me. Also, I had a migraine this month, and it lasted me for like better part of a week, and it wasn't the entire week. The symptoms would come up. There was a day where I was reading Longbourn that I had one of those visual ones that you don't get the headache, but you get the weird spots. And I was like, okay, here comes the headache. And a few days later, I had the headache. And a few days later, I had the nausea. It was fun. So it kind of affected my reading a little bit. Like I took a sick day while I was reading Sensibility. So maybe I wasn't in my full faculties to enjoy it. I still loved it so much. It doesn't matter. I will always love it. Next, I finished Jane Austen at Home, Lucy Worsley. I really recommend this one. If you're going to read a biography of Jane Austen, it's thorough, it's chatty, it's enjoyable, it gets into certain rumors and either puts more fuel into it or removes all doubt, or whatever, or just speculates, but not too much. You know what I mean? A little of everything. I always loved her sort of documentaries, and I love this too. Only problem is, of course, you know, Jane Austen dies at the end, and she does a good job of explaining that in the women in Jane Austen's life. She really delves into the women of her life, even though obviously everyone's important. But oh my goodness, her friends that stayed with her to the end, even more than family in a sense, it was fascinating, but also just sad, because Jane Austen died so young. She was younger than me, okay? Oh, I can't even imagine that. But still great. Jane Austen, you know, you always think of her as living in, she lived in a small parish, very, you know, small town, village life. She didn't have a lot of city life. She did, though. She lived in Bath for a while. She even stayed in London for periods of time. And she did get around, seaside adventures, as it were, you know. Not that she liked everywhere she was at. I think she always would have preferred, you know, living in Hampshire or any area near where she grew up. But either way, it does get into all the places she lived in, and you know, a little more than I had remembered, because I've read quite a few biographies of Jane Austen. Please read this one. If you're choosing a biography, I would most certainly recommend this one. It was written around the was it the bicentennial of Jane Austen's death, so it was a, you know, kind of neat little packaging there. I hate to do things around people's death, but you know, it's life. I mean, Hamilton was sort of, it came out, I think. No, I'm wrong with that. 210. Oh, I'm doing math. This is not good. Anyway, next. All right, so I finished this week for the second time, Northanger Abbey, and I love it. And okay, I understand why it's not considered the best of Jane Austen's, but it's still great. And oh my goodness, I actually love Catherine Morland. And I think, because I know you're not supposed to put yourself into every person, or are you? Interesting. But I think I like her because, and then when I first read the book, I was just a little bit older than Catherine was in this, and I'm also Catherine, of course, so I'm very, it's egocentric. But even so, I was a pretty young, I think 19-year-old. And there were parts of the story itself that I think went right over my head. And that's why I say I relate to Catherine. Things do go right over her head, or she takes things very literally. She lives in her own head. She tries to make things fit in with her fantasies based on the novels she read. And honestly, that's very much what I did, which I don't do as much in my later portion of life, which is kind of sad. I feel like it's kind of snapped off. Let's see if I can sort of jumpstart that again. Who knows? But I don't know. I just like her, and I don't think she's the best thing ever. But that's the whole point. She wasn't supposed to be this glamorous heroine. She still has interesting sort of adventures, more social adventures, and interesting relationships with different people she trusted that ended up being not so trustworthy, people that she liked that she ended up being right about, and she does end up sort of standing up for herself, not in its real tough girl way, but just in a way that you kind of feel proud of her. She, for such a young person with so little inexperience, she does know what she likes and she knows what she wants, and I think that's good. I think I don't, like I said, I don't think people usually list her as the best heroine of Jane Austen's novels, and I probably wouldn't either, but I still say I enjoyed spending time with her. And I also remember if you watched my previous posting about the Jane Austen tag, I spoke about how, I liked in Persuasion, the Crofts, I hope I'm not forgetting names now, how they were a good happy couple. You don't see too much of that. Katie from Books and Things goes into marriage in a recent post, and it was excellent. I think I'll link it down here. Northanger Abbey actually has a few decent marriages, not all, but a couple of couples that are just solid. They may not be the most amazing people, but they're good couples, and I think that's one of the best things about this book. It I don't know, there's just something about it. So definitely read that if you haven't read it and you think, oh well, I've read a lot of the good Jane Austen ones that whatever, this one's not as good. Oh, read it, and it's fun. It makes fun of things, but it's not harsh about it either. I don't know, just read it. Okay, so that's the reading I've done, and I have started. This is not actually part of the challenge, but I did mention this: the Northanger Abbey by Val McDermid. Who I've heard is a pretty good writer, and I haven't read any of her things that I know of, because you know what? I have read books and totally forgotten the writer, which is sad. But I just started a few pages in, and I kind of like it, and I hope I continue to like it. I don't know if it's going to be too derivative to me. I mean, it's supposed to be derivative, but I don't know. But it's not part of the challenge. I just thought it was a good little extra. I started Evelina by Frances Burney. And I started about a week ago, and I didn't not finish it. I just haven't continued because I was reading other things. So I'm not in love with it yet. I don't know if I will be. I don't hate it. I just had to get in, the letters back and forth. I wasn't sure how I felt about everybody yet, if I could really put myself in there yet. But I think it's got possibilities, and I hope that I can just dash right into it and love it. I haven't started Love and Friendship yet. I will soon. It's a quick read from what I gather. My sister read it with excellent speed, so I hope I shall too, because it's always nice when you know someone who's been reading something that you're reading in person. In person, yeah. She doesn't live right here, but still, we can still talk about it. It's wonderful. So I believe those are all the books of the challenge. And as far as the films, I outdid myself. Like I said, I had some sick time that I took, and unless I'm in a blinding can't move migraine, I can usually watch films or TV shows. I managed to watch Sense and Sensibility from the 90s and from 2008. I think it's the BBC version. Liked both of them very much. Forgot certain actors were in certain things. So, oh, he was in Downton Abbey, and he was in this and that, and everybody else has a different he was in, she was in comparison, but I definitely liked it. I also watched Pride and Prejudice again with the Colin Firth version, because after I watched Longbourn, I sort of wanted to see the servants that were mentioned in the book that were also, in the film. I wanted to see how they were portrayed, because, you live with them, and you want to see how they're portrayed. And I thought that was good. It was very brief. You don't see any of the servants very much, which makes sense, because that was the whole point of Pride and Prejudice. You're not really getting into it. And again, going back into that, even though I do feel like it would have been terrible if anything had happened to the Bennets, like if they hadn't gotten married and Mr. Bennet died and they returned out of their house, etc. But I still think they would have made it. You know what I mean? They still would have had support in their family. You know, they had uncles, aunts, etc., who would have at least come to some kind of aid. But I do think that the servants had a lot more of a difficult life. Not all of them, but most of them. Who knows what would have happened to them if someone died? Like for instance, if Mr. Collins took over, what would have happened? That was actually kind of addressed. Oh, what would happen to the servants? And I have to remember to think about things like that. I know I don't want to take away from the enjoyment of Jane Austen, you know, because sometimes you get too, if you think too much, it will take, if you're doing it for fun, you know what I mean? But sometimes, I mean, I love history, and I, you know, people are interesting, and you want to know what happened to everyone in society, you know, from top to bottom, really. Because who would we have been during that time? We don't know. Everybody always thinks, oh, I'd be this, you know, lady, this and that. No, probably not. Most of us would not be. Come on, do the math, or don't do the math. I don't want to encourage math in this. Anyway, that is all I have for Jane Austen. There's another book I took out of the library about Jane Austen that I haven't shown yet, but I plan to. But I don't plan to finish it before the end of the month, so I did decide not to really include it into the whole Jane Austen July situation. And another thing I do to myself, and I will consider this next time, is how many books I have taken out of the library recently. And you've seen at least one haul of mine. I have so many books that I own. Hello, this is my TBR card right here, and that's my cat over there, and he's distracted by the AC, and so am I. But so I have a stack of library books, which is ridiculous because I was not intending to read any of these. Oh, it's raining. I'm still distracted. I like the library books. They distract me. But you know what? This is how I am. This is what I do. I love books. I love my teas. And one day I'll also write about tea books that I love. But we're not talking about that right now. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you're doing the challenge, please let me know in the comments how you've been doing. I'll probably be watching your videos if I can find them. I've been following quite a few people and their challenges, and it's been great. I don't remember who it was. Was it the Spinster's Library? I hate saying it and not being right. If it is, I'll link it below. Wrote or did a video about Mary Bennet, and I loved it. You know, I always kind of felt for Mary Bennet too, because I'm a middle child, and I do a lot of reading, and I'm a bit of a nerd, and yeah, I always was a little afraid of being the Mary Bennet, but it's okay to be a little Mary Bennet, you know. We can't all be 100% Elizabeth. But I would like to be a little bit Elizabeth. Just a little bit, you know. Anyway, so hope you've enjoyed, and I hope you're having a really good summer, and I hope you're staying cool, like I am so far, and I will see you next time. Bye!